On today's episode of Time About the Movies, a star-studded ensemble cast featuring future Academy Award winners in Emma Stone, Viola Davis, Octavia Spencer, Jessica Chastain, Allison Janney. They join up alongside Bryce Dallas Howard, Sissy Spacek, and Cicely Tyson for the story of The Help. We also have the fifth installment of the Final Destination series, or what was supposed to be the end of the Final Destination series, which eventually did not become that, especially what we had this past summer, but we'll take a look at that. We'll also take a look at Ruben Fleischer's follow-up to Zombieland with Jesse Eisenberg and Aziz Ansari, 30 Minutes or Less, the action comedy with also Danny McBride and Nick Swartzen. And, hey, Glee is still somewhat popular, so let's go ahead and try to cash in on that, as well as the 3D concert movie trend, which, yeah, needless to say, it was not as successful as you would think it is, but Glee, the 3D concert movie, we will take a look at that. 4 films to take a look at today for August 12, 2011. This is, of course, Time About the Movies. Remember, this whole thing was started because Octavia Spencer used Bryce Dallas Howard's bathroom. Well, okay, that technically wasn't it, but that trailer makes it seem like that's the thing that really set this whole thing off in general, but there was much more before that. Welcome to Time About the Movies. Today we are taking a look at the 4 films of August 12, 2011, and we start off with the biggest release of the weekend, which is the period drama, The Help. It stars Emma Stone, and it follows her and her relationship with 2 black maids played by Viola Davis and Octavia Spencer. It's during the Civil Rights Movement in 1963 in Jackson, Mississippi, in an attempt to block a legitimate journalist and become a legitimate journalist and writer. Skeeter, Emma Stone, decides to write a book from the point of view of the maids, exposing the racism and discrimination they face as they work for white families. Black domestic workers in the 1960s United States were referred to as The Help, hence the epimonious title of the journalistic expose, the novel, and the film. This is based off of the novel by Catherine Stockett, and it was also produced by Chris Columbus and also Tate Taylor, who would later work with Octavia Spencer again a couple years later with Ma, which was another success in general. But this was a big success overall, and really, it's not hard to see why. It definitely delivers on everything that you expect it to do. It includes an ultimate stacked cast of a ton of great actresses, from present to past. You got a ton of notable people in here. The ones I just mentioned before, Emma Stone, Jessica Chastain, Octavia Spencer, Allison Janney, Viola Davis, mixed in with veterans like Cicely Tyson and Sissy Spacek. Of course, Octavia Spencer won the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress in here, and she really does knock it out of the park in this movie. She really does give it the film's best efforts, and she really makes it work overall. And it's a movie that proved that Emma Stone was not just somebody that is just forced to kind of be in like these, mainstream movies in general. Here she is in a movie that's an Oscar contender, and she shows off her true acting abilities, and she makes it work very well to a T. And this, of course, is the woman that will later go on to win 2 Academy Awards for Best Actress down the road. And yeah, it's a very thought-provoking storyline, and a very intriguing storyline in general. It doesn't do the same thing that Driving Miss Daisy does, where, you can kind of tell it was kind of an Oscar bait-ish type of movie, but it works because the performances overall are good by Jessica Tandy and Morgan Freeman. This doesn't do that in particular. It has some of those elements to it, but it does make itself stand out on its own merits, where it doesn't feel like it's ripping off that kind of a storyline, but it's doing something very different in its own merits, and makes it work very well because the actors are game in on it. The period elements are really good. The acting is top-notch. The writing and direction is very good by Tate Taylor. Not much more I can really add to this, has already been said already. It was one of the big hits of the year. It was a big Oscar contender that year. And it really is hard not to see why. It's a great film. What more can you say, man? The Help is pretty damn good, so. With that said, let us go ahead and move on to our next movie, and that is Final Destination 5. Yeah, that trailer makes this movie look much more stupider than it actually is, but to its credit, though, I mean, people did go to see it. It was a big box office in general, and actually, before Final Destination Bloodlines, it was actually the second highest grossing film in the franchise, grossing over $157 million worldwide on a $40 million budget. So it did overall make its money back in general, but does that make it a great movie overall? I won't go that far, but I will say the trailer makes it look much worse than it actually is. But in the story, you have Nicholas D'Augusto from Fired Up, who has a premonition and saves a group of people from death when a suspension bridge begins to collapse. However, they soon learn that they cannot escape death's plan. Of course, you have Tony Todd back as Blumfeld in this, and you have David Koechner among the people involved in this, as well as Courtney B. Vance. So there is a little bit more star talent in this movie. Not really the biggest stars in general, but people that you do recognize overall. And like I said, the trailer made it look much more ridiculous than it actually is. The movie overall is still a ton of fun, which serves as a surprisingly solid full circle to the series when you really think about it, when you have Tony Todd coming back into play here, and also an ending that literally ties back into the first movie. And it surprisingly made a lot of sense despite the 10-year difference between those movies. When I watched this for the first time around, I didn't really like the way that they tied it back in, because there was no sense whatsoever that this took place in the year 2000 when the original Final Destination came out. But somehow it does, and when you watch it again, it's just kind of like, okay, now I'm starting to see that where you're getting the ideas for this. Yeah. I mean, for the longest time, I thought it was kind of a bad idea. I thought it was kind of a bad way to point it back together to the original Final Destination film. But when you watch it again and you see what they do with it, it is impressively done, especially when you get to see the plane blowing up when everybody from the first movie is off of there. And yeah, it looks pretty intense overall, and it does work very well. It's a good, fun experience that makes you honestly realize that the Final Destination series overall are fun movies in general. And considering that it has now been over 10 years since this last movie, you only have to wonder what were the new elements they were going to bring to the table with the next film, and they knocked that out of the park big time. And that was made by people who had never made a big feature film before, let alone an indie picture. And here they are getting a chance to come in and do this new movie when they're relative unknowns, and they knock it out of the park with the first try. Like, these movies overall have been really solid all across the board. They've all been entertaining. Even the third one, even with it being as bad as it is, there are still fun elements in that movie. It's because you get so invested in the kills and how the action sequences play out, and the good use of 3D overall. 3D is done very well, especially with the last two movies. And this film does a pretty good job with it as well. I really enjoyed the hell out of these movies in general. I think they're all pretty solid, except the third one may be the weakest one of the series, but it's still a fun movie regardless for some of the stuff that's in there. But I really like this movie. I really do enjoy these movies. This one's pretty good. Not much more I can add to it. Final Destination 5, it's definitely worth a watch if you love the other films. So with all that said, let's go ahead and move on to our next movie that we have here, Ruben Fleischer's follow-up to Zombieland, and that is 30 Minutes or Less.
30 Minutes or Less.
So in the movie, Jesse Eisenberg plays a pizza delivery boy who's strapped with a bomb and is forced to, with the help of his friend Aziz Ansari, rob a bank in exchange for disarming it. And the two guys that strap him with this bomb are Danny McBride and Nick Swartzen. It's essentially another action comedy in the same vein as another Danny McBride August action comedy from Sony, Pineapple Express. However, Pineapple Express was a really funny movie. This one, not so much. I mean, this wasn't a bad movie per se, but it definitely pales in comparison to not only Pineapple Express, but especially Zombieland. But you could just tell it was a film that was trying way too hard with the action comedy format. Like, it's trying to be something on the lines of a 48 Hours or a Beverly Hills Cop or Lethal Weapon, but the writer of this is not somebody who is capable of making a movie on that level or making it stand out as something different. This is written by somebody named Michael DeLiberti, who I've never even heard of, and he doesn't even have anything on his Wikipedia page, so I can't tell if he's written anything else of noteworthiness. I don't think he has, but yeah, overall, this was not a very good movie. This guy also has a really odd bibliography of stuff. He also wrote Failure to Launch, remember that movie? And then he also wrote Notes on a Scandal, the movie with Judi Dench and Cate Blanchett that was an Oscar contender in 2006. Yes, that same man wrote this movie. Like, yeah, how am I supposed to trust him with a comedy like this? And unfortunately, the comedy in here really isn't all that funny. It has the same problems with this film that The Change-Up had. Like, it has way too many gross-out humor elements that are not even trying to be funny whatsoever. They're just doing it because, hey, we have an R-rated comedy, and we can't do an R-rated comedy without some gross-out humor. And it just happens all throughout this movie. And nobody's really giving it their all in here. There's a couple of laughs here and there, but there just isn't enough for me to say that it's something that you have to see. And for Ruben Fleischer coming off of Zombieland, this is the first of several films that were kind of disappointing letdowns here. In fact, most of the movies he's made since then, since Zombieland, have not been great. And even the best one was Zombieland Double Tap, and even then, that wasn't anywhere near as good as the original Zombieland, but still better than stuff like Gangster Squad or Venom or Uncharted. Certainly going to be better than Now You See Me 3, which he's working on that, because apparently some random guy out there was asking for another Now You See Me movie, which I'm not that guy, because those two movies fucking suck. But you get the idea. This is not a great movie. It's kind of a letdown with everybody involved in it. And with a better writer, I think this probably could have been so much better, but unfortunately, what they have here, it just doesn't work in the end. So a hard skip on 30 minutes or less. So, but as bad as this is, it pales in comparison to the worst movie we have this week, and that's our last film, Glee, the 3D concert movie.
The 3D concert movie.
Please, save your money. This thing sucks.
You think Jane Lynch is kidding there? No. She's giving you a legitimate warning. Stay away from this movie because it really does suck. This is, of course, the 3D concert movie based off the popular television series, which even by 2011 in its second season, that shit was dying out quickly. I mean, the first season was a success for Glee, but then since then, the show had kind of fallen off. And funny enough, it fell off at its highest peak when it was found after the Super Bowl. It had an episode I was a fan of the show when it first came on. The first season I thought was really good. After that, it just fell apart pretty quickly because it just fell into routine, the same things over and over again. People got to pick on the Glee Club. They got to throw the slushies at them like it's supposed to be like that's supposed to be like a pivotal moment in there. But yeah, once in the beginning it's funny, but as it continues on and they do it every single episode, it's just kind of like, come on, man, it's getting ridiculous. It got ridiculous pretty quickly, and it fell apart pretty quickly. Not even a year into its run, and the last couple the other seasons of Glee were pretty terrible, but the first season was all right. But this is a movie depicting the Glee cast concert in East Rutherford, New Jersey, during the group's 2011 Glee Live in Concert tour. It features behind-the-scenes footage, a set list of songs from the first two seasons, as well as the behind-the-scenes footage, and the film portrays the series' influence on teenagers, including one who's gay, one with Asperger's syndrome, and a cheerleader with a short stature. Yeah, so it's basically trying to pull every heartstring you can while trying to save this movie for having a purpose to exist right here. Because I'm going to be completely honest with you. You know, the Jonas Brothers, Justin Bieber, Miley Cyrus, those made sense to have concert movies because they were they were movies that were coming out that were hard to get tickets to the actual concerts for, and you had to get scalpers to come get the best tickets available. And you understand making a movie on that level because you can make a movie for the big screen and it won't cost you as much as trying to get these tickets from scalpers and all that. There was more lashback on the Justin Bieber movie because everyone thought it was way too early to make a movie about the kid when he was only 16, and even then, the guy wasn't a bad singer. The kid wasn't a bad singer. I just thought he was just way too overhyped. He's got the Taylor Swift thing where we're going to overhype this guy to a T and turn him into the next Michael Jackson. Because that's what they were literally trying to do. Which I feel like they were trying to do with Taylor Swift by turning her into the next Whitney Houston. Which, yeah, nobody's going to ever top them, whatever you try to do. But I think people wouldn't have been as harsh to Justin Bieber as they are now. I caught a little bit of that movie before, back in the day. And I mean, it wasn't bad per se. It just felt unnecessary. But with this, however, there's no excuse to make this movie. And to force people to pay $12 to see this movie, because this is in 3D. Yeah. And to pay $12 to see this in the theater, you better be getting something really good for 3D besides whatever the hell this movie was. I mean, even High School Musical had a concert movie that Disney was smart enough to put out on DVD and not force people to see it in theaters. Fox just had no reason to put a Glee concert movie in theaters because by this point, Glee is already losing many of its viewers already. I mean, the show has already started its falling off point, and the fact that it made it to 6 seasons, with a second season that was really slumming it, like, this was terrible. And surprise, surprise, the film bombed at the box office. I mean, they made their money back. They made double their money back. But for a movie based off of Glee, you expect a whole lot more than this. I mean, this is just a bland concert experience, and even adding in these ridiculous segments, like I said before, of like the whole thing was just like, well, here's these kids with special needs and all that. Just like, okay, and Like, you can't mix two things into one. You can't have both a concert movie and a feature-length episode split into different segments in the same movie. Either do it one way, or don't do it at all. Plain and simple. But this was one of the more excruciating film experiences I had in 2011, because there's no reason to make a movie like this. Nobody is demanding tickets for this than they would for a Justin Bieber or a Miley Cyrus concert. I mean, that's just something where it's just like, the whole thing is just a ridiculous ploy and an attempt to get as much money as you can as the sinking ship that is Glee is continuing to go through 2011. Because I'm telling you, by 2011, the show had lost already a bunch of its muster. And nobody cared at that point when it was all said and done. Like, when the show ended, everyone was just kind of like, oh, I didn't know that was still on the air. Because that's exactly what happened. Like, nobody gave a crap anymore. Like, the show had one great season, and then it just completely faded out into obscurity, and nobody even remembers it to this day. No matter how hard you try, there's just nothing there. The only thing that the show is memorable for is the fact that half the cast keeps dying from it. I mean, literally, I think 3 people have died after the show ended, or as the show was on the air. Like, we got a Glee curse thing going on here, man. We haven't had a thing that's related to like a curse or anything, but we've got a Glee curse going on here. I pray that the rest of the people that were involved in this cast make it out without ever having to suffer the same fates that those 3 people did beforehand. But yeah, that's my thoughts on Glee, the 3D concert movie. Just absolutely pointless. Absolutely 100% pointless. And thus, with all that said, we wrap up another edition of Time About the Movies, and you can tell that we're done with the summer season, because here comes the second dumping ground period, because, yeah, we've got 3 films here that were clearly meant for other parts of the year, but because the studio realized, oh shit, we can't release these movies at a time we actually believe in it, they'll ream us for life. So here we go. Here's Spy Kids 4, All the Time in the World, as Jessica Alba continues her continuing downfall from respectability, along with Joe, and brings along Joel McHale for the ride as well. And Ricky Gervais too, because he's in that too. Jason Momoa, back before he was cool, he was starring in a lame kind of remake of Conan the Barbarian. Now, Jason Momoa as Conan O'Brien would have been much more interesting than the Conan the Barbarian movie they put him in. We'll take a look at that. We'll take a look at the remake of Fright Night with Colin Farrell and Toni Collette. Actually, maybe the one good thing that came out this entire weekend. And then we have Anna Hathaway and Jim Sturgis starring in the movie One Day, which should be good, but it's not. And I'll explain why when we get to that movie coming up tomorrow. We'll take a look at those 4 films and more. I think I said 3 before, but no, there is 4 films, so I just noticed Fright Night there. But anyway, that's those films for tomorrow. But with all that said, thank you so much for watching this, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please go ahead and hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification button, and also don't forget to check out the playlist, and also check out the last episode we did. And don't forget to stay tuned, because Time About the Movies Flashback is coming up after I post this up, because we are finishing up 1987, taking a look at the films of the 2nd and 9th of January 1987, and then next week will be the 87 Leftovers episode to wrap 1987 off completely. So stick around for that, but in the meantime, whether it's in the past, the present, or the future, I will see you at the movies. Take care.